Hi, everyone. I'm Daria, and this is Jeff, and we're super excited to be here today. We are going to be taking questions at the end of this presentation using the app. So if you go to the Q&A section on your app and you enter the code UNITE and you select track 1, enter all your questions, and Jeff will answer all the hard ones.
Thanks for that.
This talk is for you if you use the Product Invariance API, Fulfillment API, Refunds API, or Fulfillment Services API. Like Lindsay said earlier, this is the largest migration we've ever done, and we want to give you all the information you need to make this migration a success. Like our product, these APIs have evolved to support locations, and today we'll walk you through exactly what this means and what you need to do to help merchants with multiple locations. We'll explain how this affects your dropshipping app, your printing on demand app, your product management app, your inventory management app, your 3PL or ERP integration. But before Jeff gets into the nitty-gritty, I'd like to talk to you about why this is so important for our merchants. To do that, we'll need to time travel back to 2008, when Shopify was designed for merchants with simple inventory needs. 10 years ago, most of our merchants started their business storing their inventory, fulfilling and shipping it all from a single place, usually their basement. In 10 years' time, our environment has evolved a lot. Today, our merchants are starting out in a way more complicated world. They're selling at pop-ups, they're finding products to sell from dropshippers, they're storing inventory in their basement or at a rented space in a local warehouse. So, in response to this complexity, we're introducing this new fundamental concept and the workflow surrounding it, and we're calling it locations. While the APIs and functionality is ready for you to learn and test, we realized that this took us a really long time to build. And we want to make sure that we give you enough time and space to test it out and innovate and provide us feedback before we release locations to all merchants later this summer. So what is a location exactly? The easiest way to think about locations is any place where a merchant does business. It can have an address, it can store inventory, it can ship items, it can make sales. With locations, instead of seeing a single number that represents all of our merchants' inventory for a specific product, which is what we do today, for the first time ever, our merchants will see their inventory per location. Merchants using our point of sale will get to see and sell only the inventory available at their retail store. And merchants will be able to check for items inventory at other locations right from within Shopify point of sale. So these locations can represent a physical space with inventory that our merchants manage, like this LA retail store or New York retail store. But when I say retail, I don't just mean brick and mortar storefronts. I mean any IRL experience, pop-up shop, yard sales, weekend sales at the farmer's market, outlet shops, trade shows, you name it. Locations allow merchants flexibility, visibility, and accuracy however and wherever they want to sell. But locations can also represent a virtual place where inventory is stored or fulfilled from that is not necessarily managed by the merchant. Instead, these locations can be managed by apps. Locations is now a dedicated home for fulfillment apps, custom fulfillment services, dropshipping apps, printing on demand apps, 3PL services, and all the physical places from which orders are being fulfilled. And as Lindsay mentioned, this is actually my favorite part. We're making locations available on all plans because we believe that all merchants should have access to the flexibility that locations provide. We're including 6 locations on all plans at no additional cost, while Shopify Plus merchants will have the flexibility they need on the number of locations. This lets all our merchants manage their items at one or more locations, giving merchants better visibility and control over their inventory management. And your apps can specify exactly where items are being stocked, fulfilled from, or refunded to. But the location experience goes beyond inventory management. So to empower merchants with multiple locations, we've rebuilt entirely our order management and fulfillment platforms. We've updated transfers, refunds, and other resources throughout Shopify. So let's dive deeper into some of the features. First thing first, you may be wondering how locations affect online orders. Well, we're giving merchants the control to prioritize which locations they want to fulfill their online orders, whether these online orders are coming from the online store or any online channel like Pinterest or eBay. At checkout, we will check if any single location has all the items available to fulfill the order. And if no single location has all the items available, we will split the order across multiple locations, creating multiple shipments. Then, merchants can easily locate orders that need to be fulfilled from any given location from the orders index. And when reviewing an order, staff at any given location are able to clearly see what work they need to do versus what work they can leave to print-on-demand apps, dropshipping apps, or third-party fulfillment services. This means that regardless of how merchants are storing and fulfilling their inventory, it's all captured inside Shopify. We also realize that things might change. Inventory can be lost or found. Additional inventory quantities can be ordered and received at a new location. And so we wanted to give merchants full control on how items are being fulfilled. After an order has been placed, merchants can change the location from which items should be fulfilled and fulfill these items from the new location. Apps can also specify which locations orders were fulfilled from. The same logic applies to returns and refunds, as merchants and apps can specify which locations items are being restocked to. And finally, any adjustments, whether from completed fulfillments or inventory changes made by merchants or apps, are shown to merchants within the inventory history to ensure that merchants have full visibility on any changes that could affect the accuracy of their inventory. Now that you've got a better feel for what managing multiple locations looks like for our merchants, you're probably asking yourselves, what does this mean for our apps? And Jeff is going to take a few minutes to walk you through exactly that.
Awesome. Thanks, Variant. So over the past few years, Shopify's really grown with our merchants to support selling across multiple sales channels, whether that's in a physical retail store, Pinterest, Facebook, and many more. But our back office capabilities haven't evolved to keep up. Shopify actually introduced locations way back in 2013 with the introduction of our point-of-sale product. Back then, locations were only connected to orders, keeping track of the specific location where an order is placed. There we go. So since then, we've put a ton of work into upgrading the platform to get location awareness in tons of different areas, across inventory, fulfillment, refunds, transfers, and more. With these changes to the back office, we're getting a much-needed upgrade to keep up with our merchants' growing needs. So the good stuff. Let's get to the APIs. The three APIs I want to talk about today are the Product Invariance API, the Fulfillment API, and the Refunds API. Let's start with Product Invariance. So wherever our merchants' items are stocked, whether that's in a warehouse, a retail store, with a drop shipper, we want to know about it. To make this possible, we're introducing two new concepts to the platform: inventory items and inventory levels. So follow me from left to right here. Sorry, your left to right. We've got a product connected to a multivariant product, various sizes. Behind the scenes, each of those variants is now connected to an inventory item resource. This represents the physical good that's stored in inventory. Each of those inventory items is connected to inventory levels, which hold the specific quantity that's stored in each of our merchants' locations. So with that structure in mind, variants connected to inventory items connected to inventory levels across all locations. With that structure in mind, let's look at our APIs and how they're changing. So in the past, each variant has a single quantity inside of Shopify. Apps would push this quantity to update things. That same quantity would be displayed across all of our merchant sales channels. We know this isn't quite good enough. So to better support multi-location businesses, we need to offer a bit more flexibility here. To accomplish that, we're going to take advantage of these new inventory models. So like we said, each variant is now connected to an inventory item, which houses the SKU that was previously on the variant. Think of inventory items as having attributes like SKU, length, width, height, and weight. Those inventory items now link to multiple inventory level resources, tracking the individual quantities at each individual location. So you see the 80 quantity on the variant is split across 30 and 50 for 2 locations. This is just available quantity, though. In the future, expect more types of quantities to show up here, like incoming quantities from transfers, on-hand quantities for physical counts, and committed quantities. So with the introduction of these new resources, you're probably asking, what's really the difference? These are one-to-one objects. It feels like they might be the same thing. We want you to continue to use the product Invariance API for merchandising concerns. So go here to answer questions like, how should an item be priced? What sales channel should they be published to? What descriptions and images should customers see? On the other hand, the new inventory API should very much be focused on the back office operations of our merchants' businesses. Where are these items stored? How much of a particular SKU are stored in the warehouse versus a retail store? How much does an item weigh? So this is great. You've now got access to 2 APIs with a clear separation of concerns. We're also going one step further and adding inventory webhooks to these new resources so you can subscribe to exactly the information that matters to you. So we think these 2 resources do 2 things for you. It simplifies the partner experience by letting you target the data you care about, and it gives you the flexibility to build value for multi-location merchants. So just to recap, we've got these new inventory APIs. Start migrating to these before July 2018, when we'll stop accepting SKU and quantity updates on the Variance API. If your app cares about inventory data, go ahead and subscribe to those inventory webhooks, and continue to use the product Invariance API for merchandising concerns. But like Daria mentioned earlier, locations aren't just about inventory. They also affect fulfillment. So that brings us to our Fulfillment API. So the Fulfillment API allows apps to tell Shopify which items were picked and packed for shipping. It's now been updated to let you tell us where those items were processed. A location ID is in there. Surprise, surprise. There we go. So just like the inventory API, upgrade by July 2018, when we'll start requiring a location ID on all fulfillments entering our platform. So if tracking goods being shipped out from merchants' locations now gets the multi-location treatment, it makes sense that goods coming back to those merchants' businesses also gets that treatment. That brings us to our Refunds API. So just a quick refresher on the Refunds API. This allows apps to process return payments to customers. It allows apps to tell Shopify about restocking inventory. And it also allows notifications to go out to customers about changes made to their orders. But currently, restocking is an all-or-nothing operation on this API. Either all of the items on a given refund are restocked to inventory, or none of them are. We're switching this up to give you a bit more flexibility here. So the example here is a return shipment. First thing you notice at the top, the global restock flag is gone. Instead, you can specify exactly which location to restock each item to. There's also that return or restock type at the bottom. There's 3 options here, which we'll dive into now. So you got a no restock option, a cancel option, and a return option. If you're just trying to process a return payment to a customer, and you don't want any impact on inventory, go ahead and use that no restock option. If this is a cancellation of goods pre-fulfillment, before the items have been shipped to the customer, cancellation's for you. And the last one there, return. So use this option when the items have already gone out to the customer and they're being processed as a return shipment. So these changes, along with all the others we've talked about, are available to you today through our APIs. With the newly introduced inventory APIs and the updates to the Fulfillment API and Refunds API, let's walk through 3 categories of apps to see what steps they need to take to migrate. So I'll walk through a dropshipping app, an inventory management app, and an order management app. We'll start with a dropshipping app. So the typical dropshipper offers on-demand fulfillment and delivery services to merchants' businesses. Merchants connect with dropshippers, choose which items they'd like to sell, and display them on their online store. Meet our fictitious dropshipper Droop. Droop buys T-shirts in bulk and offers on-demand screen printing. When an order is placed inside of Shopify, Droop screen print shirts from their warehouse in Atlanta. Like we said, they also take care of fulfillment responsibilities, picking, packing, and handing off shipments for delivery. When a merchant installs Droop, the app registers as a fulfillment service within Shopify. Product invariants are selected and assigned to that fulfillment service. To the merchant, that looks something like this. Behind the scenes, when Droop registers as a fulfillment service, Shopify is generating a dedicated location to house those goods. When updating inventory quantities, Droop will use that new location to update inventory levels on our platform. They'll also use that new location to tell us about where these items were processed for shipping through our Fulfillment API. To the merchant, an item that belongs to Droop looks something like this. You'll notice at the top there, tiny font, I'm sorry, inventory managed by Droop. But by assigning a variant to the Droop fulfillment service, there's an underlying assumption that it's solely responsible for fulfillment of this SKU and no one else. While this first launch of location doesn't break that assumption, it is something we want to get away from in the future. You can expect more on how we plan to do this later this year. So that's it for dropshippers in a nutshell. Go ahead and start using the new inventory APIs. Go ahead and start using the updated multi-location fulfillments API. And start thinking of your dropshipping app as just another source of inventory, a location. Next, we'll walk through an inventory management app. These are typically apps that do inventory counts, cycle counts. They might do purchase order tracking to track goods coming into our merchants' businesses. The imaginary SKUply app keeps track of inventory across multiple locations. But their bread and butter is really maintaining a vast supplier network that merchants can choose to purchase goods from. So let's follow along with SKUply and how they'll transition to support multi-location businesses. Up until now, SKUply has been pushing the total number of units available across all of our merchants' locations into Shopify. They're super eager for multi-location tracking, so they can get back to focusing on their supplier network. With the new location or inventory API, they can push per location counts into our platform. Great. They'll also subscribe to those inventory webhooks to get notified about inventory changes. With inventory now tracked by Shopify, they can get back to focusing on what they do best, which is supplier integrations. So to recap, for inventory management apps, go ahead and start using these new inventory APIs. You're seeing a theme. Stop using the Invariance API for inventory count updates. And start consuming inventory-specific webhooks to get notified about changes in inventory. Doesn't want to go? There we go. Last group of apps I want to talk through are order management apps. So these are really full-blown apps that do returns, fulfillment processing, inventory tracking, tons of different responsibilities, even importing orders from across multiple sales channels. So like Droop, our dropshipper, OmniOrder is going to look to the new inventory APIs for better multi-location integration with our platform. When fulfillments are processed, OmniOrder is also going to start telling us about where those items were processed for shipping. But they also have a great return shipping feature, allowing customers to print out return labels at home and allowing merchants to track goods all the way back to their warehouses. So OmniOrder is going to take advantage of the updated refunds API to start telling us exactly where items will be restocked to and what type of restock Shopify should be processing. So that's it for order management apps. The ask here is a bit more involved. We realize that. Go ahead and start using the new inventory APIs. Start using the updated fulfillments API that's now location aware. And start using the updated refunds API that's also location aware. So now you've got a better idea of what's changed on our platform and APIs and the concrete steps you need to take as partners to update your apps. Dari is going to give you a peek in the future on where our product is going to support even more merchant value for our businesses.
Thanks, Jeff. This first release of locations focuses on bringing a lot of value to our retail merchants and lays the foundation for better inventory and order management. But to make Shopify the best platform to manage multiple locations, we have a lot of work to do. First and foremost, we want to improve location fulfillment priorities. We want to give merchants and apps better control over which locations can and cannot fulfill online orders. We've already started working on this, so expect more updates on this later this year. This year, we also want to let merchants transfer items between locations so that merchants can easily balance their inventory between locations. This release is going to be coupled with a Transfers API so that you can help our merchants keep track of their inventory movements. Then, we want to improve our customer-facing shipping rates at checkout so that we can calculate shipping rates based on the specific locations from which items are being shipped from. This benefits our merchants' customers too, because we can automatically select the best shipping rate at checkout, and this will save our merchants' customers time and money. And finally, our biggest focus this year is going to be around fulfillment. We want to significantly improve these workflows for merchants using fulfillment apps. You will hear more about app extensions in the talk tomorrow morning, but app extensions and fulfillment are a powerful combo. We're working on introducing fulfillment workflows managed by apps embedded directly within Shopify, ensuring that merchants don't have to understand when they need to use an app versus when they need to use Shopify to fulfill their orders. Expect more details on this tomorrow and later this year. These feature releases will provide additional value for merchants and app partners of all sizes, granting all merchants the superpowers that were previously only accessible to larger merchants. If a merchant has inventory on the shelves of their retail store, at the basement of their house, or in a warehouse, Shopify will be able to accurately track each group individually within a simple interface. No more duplicate products, no more spreadsheets. So to summarize, here's what you need to do. Location is ready on all new test environments to start testing and learning. Give us some feedback, and make sure you update your apps by July 2018. Come chat with us. We have a couple of folks from our team here today at office hours or in the crowd. Message us using the Unite app. Thank you very much, and we'll open the floor for questions.
Thanks. All right, let's get right into it. Live questions. Will location data be available to the front-end Liquid templates? I got this question earlier in office hours. We haven't made that available with this release, but it is something we want to look towards in the future. Can locations handle products with time and transit requirement, perishables, to determine which location should be used based on delivery address? In short, no. So we haven't got into anything like batch tracking of goods that would facilitate things like recalls or perishables or some sort of end date on when goods are good for. Yeah, not part of our platform today. Number 3, can inventory locations be determined at checkout based on cost to ship destinations? Do you want to take that one?
Right now, the locations to ship at checkout are determined manually based on a merchant selected priority. As we ship multi-location, we'll be learning about our merchants' behavior and how to improve that functionality.
Cool. Next one's about staff restrictions. So can staff accounts be restricted by location? This is definitely something we're talking about internally. The functionality that you'll see in your partner shops, if you go and try it out, basically all the indexes will remember what location you were using last, so you don't have to continue filtering on locations. But we currently do not restrict which staff members or which staff accounts have access to which location. Next one. How would this overlap with order management systems? Or is this more for smaller merchants who don't have an OMS? Order management systems or inventory management systems? It's anonymous. Whoever put this one in, come find me afterwards and we can chat. Can I select the location via the API? So the Locations API actually was introduced way back when we introduced our point-of-sale product in 2013. We're piggybacking off of that existing resource, so Locations API remains unchanged. So if you're a fulfillment service, you can hit your fulfillment services endpoint get. It'll tell you the location that's registered to you. If you're not a fulfillment service, go ahead and hit the locations index on our API to get a full list of the merchant's locations. Will a change to an inventory quantity trigger a product updated webhook? I know this is a huge source of pain. Yes. So we've got new inventory webhooks that let you scope down. So if you just care about inventory, you can just get those updates. But inventory changes necessarily update the listings that are published across all of our merchants' channels. So yes, both of those will be fired. You can choose to subscribe to the one that's most appropriate for you, though, whether that's product invariant webhooks or inventory webhooks. Got a few minutes left. Gift cards cannot be emailed by a buyer to another customer. Why? When can we expect this to be resolved? Gift cards can't be emailed to a buyer by another customer. WM Digital LLC.
Not super familiar with gift cards, but we can chat with you after the fact and follow up on that.
Cool. Patrick asks, incoming stock on transfers is currently not available through the API. Is this something that will be added in the near future? So this is a great question. One of the reasons we held off on releasing an API for transfers was because we knew all this foundational work for locations and inventory was in the works. So we didn't want to release the transfers API ahead of schedule, introduce these new resources, and force everyone to migrate. So yes, we delayed things, but we're trying to save you guys a bit of pain on the migration side of things. So like Daria said, expect a transfers API coming up. Next one, anonymous. SKUs are currently optional on Invariance. Will they be optional on inventory items? Yes, they will be. I think we goofed on our platform a while back and didn't restrict or didn't enforce SKU uniqueness in our platform. So merchants are able to put in duplicate SKUs. Some merchants use that to get around the lack of multi-location support. You would see a product variant that's called red t-shirt dash Toronto with the same SKU as red t-shirt dash Ottawa. So merchants have been using this duplicate SKU hack to sort of work around our lack of multi-location support. So SKU is going to continue to be optional on the inventory API, and uniqueness is still not enforced. Next one comes from Luke. If there's a limit of 6 locations, and you're an app provider that requires a new app-based location, and a seller with 6 locations installs your app, what happens? Yeah, this is a good question. Do you want to take this one? Yeah?
No, I didn't hear.
You don't. When an app installs, when an app gets installed that requires a location on a shop that's already at their limit, what happens?
So we have the ability for merchants to deactivate locations for any temporary locations to go below the limit and add additional apps. If we are at a limit, the merchant will not be able to install a location that is being created by an app. That is currently not implemented in your test store, so don't be surprised if it just works.
Last question comes from Keith. What did you mean when you said the dropshipper assumed they were the only location for that product? Yeah, this is a good question. So today, when an app registers as a fulfillment service and assigns product to it, that fulfillment service follows those items along throughout all of our APIs. So when an order gets placed with that item, there's a fulfillment service text snippet that's on each line item that specifically says, hey, this line item is meant for Droop or Printful or someone else. So this is something we want to get away from. We would love to be able to have merchants bulk order from Printful, store those shirts in their retail location, and also drop ship from Printful. So same SKU, stored with a fulfillment service, and stored in a retail location. This breaks that underlying assumption of ownership of that SKU. Like I said, we're going to pump up more material on how we try to accomplish this later this year. That was it for the questions. We're going to be around for Q&A sessions, and we'll be around here. Oh, you got one more? Yeah? Wi-Fi, host. Come find me afterwards, and we'll chat.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thanks, guys.